Yes, welcome back to another episode of my F1 2021 My Team Career Mode, where today we finally return for episode number 15 for the Japanese Grand Prix. Sorry it's been so long since my last episode. It's been almost a month, I think, since the last episode, but we're back. We're ready to get into some more F1, and hopefully the episode is going to be more consistent from now on until the release date of F1 22. So expect episodes twice a week until the release date, and hopefully that will bring us up until season 3 or maybe even past season 3. We will see. But for right now, we're going into the Japanese Grand Prix, and Lewis Hamilton still leads the way in the championship, with Bottas just behind as well. I think he's 11 points behind at the minute, and third place is Daniel Ricciardo. He's 98 points behind, so it's definitely a Mercedes 2-horse race this season, but it's just up to Bottas to see whether he can claw his way back up into that pole position. And will we see Lewis Hamilton slip up here today? It's forecast for wet weather around Susuka, so as it is for everyone on track. But it would be very uncharacteristic for the serial World Championship winner to slip up, but you never know what might happen in these sort of conditions, as we see ourselves get a time penalty for changing a couple engine components there just before going into this race, as I think we wouldn't be able to last the whole race on those engine components because they're like 70% worn, and they definitely need a change in before the race. So we do that, and we've got just enough time to set in maybe 1 or 2 laps before the Q1 ends, so it's now or never to set these laps just like it was in Russia. And you can see us struggling a bit on track with these wet conditions. I'm really not well suited to them. I much prefer the dry conditions, and you can see we set a lap time of 1:40.2, and that puts us P15, just ahead of Tsunoda and Esteban Ocon. But we've got just enough time to put in another lap if we can manage it, and maybe even to be able to set a third lap if we're fast enough. And with the Inters as well, they're able to last a couple laps. That means we make a huge mistake going round the corner just out of the S section of Sector 1, and that's completely ruined our Q1, and we're going to have to get around this track fast if we're going to set another lap time and be able to confirm our place into Q2. Luckily for us, we haven't managed to flat spot these tyres just yet, and I think we're able to set another lap in on them. As we do, we get around the track, and now we're on our third and final lap of this session 6 tenths up on our previous lap time. We're currently sat in 17th, just ahead of Drogovic, but can we elevate ourselves back up into that Q2 position, going around the final chicane now? These tyres definitely feeling warmer than when I started this Q1 session. Across the line, and we are through into Q2 just by the skin of our teeth in P15, and Drogovic down in P19. Unfortunate for him, but we just about get through and across the line into the second session, and hopefully we can have a much more positive session than the previous one. I'm hoping that we've now tested the waters a little bit with these wet conditions, and are trying to find our feet a little bit more, as we are currently now sat P6 but crucially ahead of both Alfa Romeos. That's our sort of benchmark in this race. We want to be ahead of them, especially Kimi Raikkonen and GIOVINAZZI down in P10 and 11, sat in P9, but eventually we are going to start dropping out of getting into that Q1 position, and we're going to have to start setting some better lap times in, as we do just then going 2 tenths up on our best lap time. Unfortunately, we don't move up any positions, but it is a better lap time, and hopefully that won't move us further down any positions, with some drivers trying to elevate themselves up into that Q1 position. So we're sat currently in P13. We go out for one last final lap to try and make something of this qualifying session, and try and... No, we've left it way too late. That we crossed the line, but not fast enough, and we were just a couple seconds off of getting that last qualifying lap in, and unfortunately we don't make it because we're waiting in that menu screen, waiting for a dry spell to come, but it didn't in the end. Eventually we go out on the Inter tyres, but we left it too late, and that's our qualifying session over, starting in P15 for the Sunday's race.
Honshu Island, for a race that has seen many title deciders over the years. Some simple, some controversial, but all contributing to a legacy that makes the Japanese Grand Prix an indispensable stop in any Formula One season. We're southwest of the city of Nagoya today at a wet and windy Susuka circuit. 3.6 miles and 18 corners make up a lap here, with Sector 1 likely to prove especially difficult in these conditions. We should see overtaking into turns 1 and 16 today, and maybe a few Kobayashi-style dives into the hairpin as well. It's not going to be plain sailing for our drivers today, although with the sky falling as it is, perhaps sailing isn't too far from the truth. And Anthony Davidson, could be a wet one today. Great to have you with us. What are your thoughts?
It is a touch damp, isn't it? Well, as a driver, there are three big things to worry about when racing in these kind of conditions: standing water, tyre temperature and visibility. Judging distance to the cars around you is really tricky when you're driving through the vast amounts of spray that these wet weather Pirelli tyres kick up.
Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's race. Young superstar Max Verstappen starts from pole position, edging out Sergio Perez, who lines up P2. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Antonio Giovinazzi and Ricciardo. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Raikkonen, Bottas, they've taken a grid penalty, and George Russell, Leclerc, Stroll, Carlos Sainz and Mick Schumacher. Latifi, Vettel, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Felipe Drugovich and Esteban Ocon. Norris, Gasly, Mazepin and Yuki Tsunoda. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track.
This is our end.
So of course not much we could do here today with the race strategy in these wet conditions, but of course change the fuel load a little bit, and that'll hopefully help us a little bit in today's race. It'll help us be a little bit lighter and a bit more nimble around the other drivers as we go down onto the grid. So 5 red lights for the Japanese Grand Prix. It's lights out and away we go. Verstappen gets a great getaway initially in first place, but so do we against Raikkonen on the left-hand side. We got the inside lane going down into the first long right-hander. Crucially, we get ahead of Kimi there on the left-hand side of us, and we're up into P7, just behind Daniel Ricciardo, and hopefully we can try and stick with the Papaya McLaren car just ahead in these wet conditions, and it's a good benchmark for visibility purposes as well, seeing that orange car just ahead as we get a little bit of a wobble on the exit of that curb just there, but you know, we managed to keep things under control, not trying to push too hard in this opening lap as the track is very wet and there's no dry racing line at the moment. And we're going to have to try and, as we go slightly onto the gravel, dipping a tyre onto the gravel, that allows Kimi to come back at us. But thankfully, we're not bogged down by all the gravel, and we stay ahead of Kimi for now. It's probably a bit of a legal manoeuvre coming back onto the track like that in the fashion we did. But nevertheless, it's yellow flags behind us, but I think that's just a precautionary measure for now, and we can stay in this P7 position. But like I was saying just before we headed into and sidelined into the gravel trap, we need to be a bit more precautious in this opening couple laps, because the track is probably well suited for heavy wets right now, but because we want to be on the inters, because obviously it's a marathon, not a sprint at the end of the day, and the track will eventually begin to warm up a little bit as we see Verstappen's great getaway initially off the starting line with Perez just in behind. So it's Red Bull 1-2, which we haven't seen much this season. We've just seen the Mercedes absolutely dominating this season 1 of my Team career mode, and it's really refreshing to see the Red Bulls doing well. You know, maybe they've sorted out their engine problems with the Honda power unit, and maybe they're back onto good terms, and hopefully we'll be able to see a resurgence from them late in this season. But nevertheless, Verstappen leads the way with Perez in behind, Hamilton in 3rd place, as you see, and then in 4th place it's Antonio Giovinazzi with the Alfa Romeo car. So it's great to see the Italian doing so well up in 4th place, and then Alonso, Ricciardo, then myself with Raikkonen and Bottas. So Alfa Romeo doing a stunning job, just like we are up here in P7. But for us right now, it's all well and good being up here in the points paying positions, but how long can we stay up here? I mean, ideally we want to be catching up with Ricciardo ahead of us, but I think for us right now, the objective is to just try and maintain this P7 position, because we can see Ricciardo and Alonso are slightly beginning to get away from us, and if we're not careful, if we're not driving to our best ability like we are, just then exceeding the track limits, then we might end up slipping up here today around Suzuka. And now we can see Kimi Räikkönen coming around the outside of us, trying to make a move on us, but I think he's too experienced to know that would have ended in disaster. And yeah, he's just playing the waiting game right now. He's maintaining his patience, and maybe instead he's going to try and get a second bite of the cherry as we go down the start-finish line. The Alfa Romeo just tucked in behind us with Bottas. He's only 4 tenths behind him, so maybe he's going to have a go at that Alfa Romeo car. We can see right now looking side to side in his mirrors, trying to get past the Alfa Romeo car, and he's going round the outside of turn 1. Beautiful move on the Alfa Romeo of Kimi Räikkönen. Both Finns going toe to toe. This is a Kimi Räikkönen that we haven't seen in a long while. Maybe he's finding his element here in the wet weather around Suzuka today, but unfortunately for him, the Mercedes power unit is just way too advanced for the Alfa Romeo, and eventually he gets past Bottas gets past the most experienced driver on the track. So Kimi down to P9, Bottas just behind us in P8 now. He's trying to make a move on us as we enter Sector 3 of the Japanese Grand Prix right now. Looking to the left-hand side of us, and the Mercedes car just zooms past us and into the penultimate corner just before the chicane. And he gets the move done with relative ease, to be honest. We tried to have another look down the inside, a little sneak peek down the inside of Bottas, trying to get that position and claim it back just before he speeds off into the distance and out of our sight. But unfortunately, we aren't able to do so. And look at that, the Mercedes car just has way too much pace for us, especially in a straight line. I mean, just look at that. See you later, Valtteri. But nonetheless, our objective hasn't changed in today's race, and we've got to continue to drive a stellar job around in these wet conditions. But right now we can see Lando Norris, the other papaya colour car, making the move on our teammate Felipe Drugovich down in P18. And yeah, once again, McLaren way too good for our cars at the moment, and it's only going to be a matter of time. I mean, season 2, I expect us to really have a resurgence and be fighting amongst the midfield and maybe even the top markers in the season right now. But as you can see, lap 5, and we are starting to move away from Bottas ahead of us. Raikkonen was also beginning to catch us up, but onto lap 8 now, and we've got a change for tyres. We're changing onto lap 15 rather than changing on lap 14, just because we're showing signs of being able to control the tyre wear around Suzuka today. But as you can see, we're in a race of our own at the minute. We're 2 seconds ahead of Raikkonen, 3 seconds behind Bottas. So we've caught up the Mercedes drivers slightly. I think there might be a train going on up ahead with GIOVINAZZI still up there. I think he's still up in 4th place. So congrats to him at the moment. Just whether he can finish in that place is another question. So we just got to continue doing our own thing at the moment. The weather report right now is saying that the rain's still going to be there for 20 more minutes, so it's not looking like we're going to get a dry spell, and I think the right move would be to go on to a fresh out of inters within the next couple of laps really, and hopefully we're able to gain some time on the cars ahead of us. It's an opportunity to get closer towards Bottas and Ricciardo, and hopefully we'll be able to move up a couple of positions from this pit stop. So lap 14, we're changing the tyres on the next lap, but I'm starting to feel like maybe if we come in a bit earlier, will we be able to get an undercut on the cars ahead, and hopefully by getting onto a fresher set of tyres sooner, we'll be able to get the jump on the opponent's head and be setting faster and faster lap times, and you know, just getting off these tyres sooner will be better, I think. So we come into the pits right now. It's a very late call, and hopefully the pit crew are ready. I think they are just ahead. Ricciardo also coming into the pits, as well as Alonso, and Ricciardo makes a jump on Alonso, so he's up into P6. Alonso down into P7, I think. So McLaren with a stellar job with their pit stop in their attempt to keep 3rd place in the championship with Daniel Ricciardo. But so have we. We've done an amazing job to get out so soon with that late call, and it's only best that we did come in when we did, really, because Leclerc and Raikkonen also pitted on the same lap, as well as the cars ahead. So we haven't really made too much traction and too much ground with that pit stop, but Hopefully by still, like I said before, getting onto a fresh set of tyres, we're going to be setting better lap times and be gaining on the cars ahead. So hopefully that's what will happen. Whether it will be the case, I'm not too sure. But here we are on the end of lap 14, and this was the lap that we were going to be making our pit stop, but we will see whether it was worth it coming in for the undercut. I hope it was, and now we're going to be able to see where we are standing in the leaderboards. After a purple third sector, it looks like we're going to be placed in P8 still, so not too much gained or lost there. Ahead of Sainz, actually. I don't know what happened to him, because I swear he was ahead, but maybe not. But now we're looking at towards getting onto the back of Fernando Alonso, and look at that, we just had a failure with our rear wing. But luckily, you know, it's wet weather, we're not going to get any DRS anyway, so I think it's stuck closed, thankfully. So that's not too much of a problem for ourselves and for the team here today, and instead we can shift our focus onto putting in some good lap times and nail down at trying to achieve this P7 position, try and gain it from Alonso, who's just up ahead. But what I just heard on the radio was Bottas has got some sort of issue with his car and he's going to be slow. Here he is getting passed by Alonso, and now he's making the dive in towards the pits now. That's so unfortunate for the Finn. Let's see what happened here on board with Valtteri Bottas. The flying Finn, he's making the move on Giovinazzi, it looks like, trying to catch up with the Italian just up ahead, and it looks like he got a puncture from out of nowhere. It seems like out of the blue his tyre just decided to disintegrate, and he's so lucky to keep the car in a straight line there and not go spinning out, because going around that corner at such a high speed, you know, anything could happen to the car. And he's very lucky to keep going in this race, to be fair to him. But nevertheless, that is so unfortunate for the Finnish driver. You know, he was doing so well to try and keep up with Hamilton in the season and try and go for the championship win, to be fair. But that's just completely ruined his race and maybe ruined his season. He may lose all motivation from this unfortunate result here today, as there's no question about it, he's going to be out of the points here today in today's race. But on the bright side for us, it's another position gained and some more points gained in this season of ours if we're able to maintain this position until the end of the race. But for us right now, we're catching up with Alonso, it seems. Every lap we go by, we're just getting closer and closer to the Alpine driver, and hopefully we're going to be able to make a move very soon. But we have to do it soon because it's getting on towards the final laps. As you can see, we're pushing so hard that we're actually exceeding the track limits once again, and I think one more warning, we're actually going to get a penalty, so we need to be very, very careful. But that's not to say we're going to give up now. We're not going to give up and stop fighting for these last few points in today's race. Max Verstappen setting another fastest lap. He's cruising his way towards a victory, it seems like. And although we've been looking ahead throughout the entirety of this race, we need to be looking behind us now, as Leclerc has cut the gap. He was like 4 seconds behind us, and he's now down to 6/10, and he's right there in between and in this mix of drivers that has been caught up in the dirty air of Giovinazzi, who's leading the train. And it feels like no matter how close you get to the driver in front of you, it only takes another corner for them to speed away and get away from and it feels like you can't accelerate enough to make the move on the driver in front. So it looks like this midfield battle is going to go right to the wire around the Japanese Grand Prix here today. But as you can see up ahead, the podium positions are pretty much confirmed unless anything drastic happens in these remaining laps. Verstappen and Perez have been doing a stellar job. Red Bull have been doing an amazing job in this race, and are looking on towards claiming that 1-2, with Lewis Hamilton picking up the third place position, and Antonio Giovinazzi is still there in that 4th place position. He's been doing so well in these wet conditions, and he's been doing so well to defend off Daniel Ricciardo as well, who's 3rd in the championship. But for us right now, we've really caught up to Alonso, and it's only a matter of time before we're able to make the pounce on him, it looks like. But nonetheless, this track still hasn't dried up enough for us to let our guard down with these treacherous conditions, especially as Leclerc is so close to our rear end. We need to be careful. We can't make any sort of mistake, otherwise he's definitely going to pounce on us. As you can see, he might even do down this main straight. Have we got the pace to fend off the Ferrari powered engine of Leclerc? We come up to the bridge section of this track where the track crosses over, but crucially we are ahead at 130R, and I don't think the move is going to be made around that corner, and we can now settle into this P7 position once again and try and put a foothold in this race and get towards the rear end of Alonso. But someone who is making a move is Daniel Ricciardo on Giovinazzi, going down towards turn 1, and Giovinazzi closes the door on the McLaren driver just there. He's not settling for second best this time out, as he's been doing an absolute mega job in 4th place up ahead. But neither am I. We're not letting up on Leclerc, and I don't think we're going to let up on Alonso either. We're going to try and snatch that position out of the Spaniards' hands and take P6 for ourselves around in this Japanese Grand Prix. But you can see how close we're getting to the rear end of Alonso. We're actually getting so close, we're actually touching the Alpine's rear end, but we need to be careful. We can't make any mistake, of course, because Leclerc is just in behind us. But now we're crossing the line onto the last lap of the Grand Prix. It's now or never. This is the final lap. If we're going to make a move, it has to be now. I think Giovinazzi is pretty much settled for P4, it looks like, but are we going to take P6 off of Alonso? We can't manage to do it. We're not close enough into turn 1 and around this S section. There's no chance we're going to make a move around the S section, as Verstappen wins the Japanese Grand Prix. An absolutely amazing job from Red Bull, and maybe this is a late resurgence and a late fight from them in the constructors table. But right now, on board with us, we're going into sector 3, and this is where the midfield fight will be determined. Ricciardo on the back of Giovinazzi, looking so close to the Italian driver. Alonso gets a good getaway initially down this main straight, but have we got the straight line speed to catch up and keep with the Spaniard? We go around 130R. Alonso goes a bit slow around that corner. Now is our time. It's now or never. We make the darting move down the inside and we crash in towards the back of Daniel Ricciardo. What has just gone on here? We've managed to keep a hold of P7 somehow, and we're going to cross the line in P7. What just happened there? Thankfully, for my sake, we keep P7 away from Leclerc, but we tried to make the move on Alonso. Our brakes were just way too wet. The track was way too wet to have that sort of braking distance on the Spaniard, and we ended up crashing into the back of Daniel Ricciardo and losing part of our front wing.
Tell me, Ant, how did they manage to achieve this win?
Well, keeping their tyre temperatures up in the tricky wet conditions was really important. There's not much grip out there at the best of times, and it's 10 times worse if you're out there on cold tyres. So the way they kept the rubber in its proper operating window was a huge advantage today.
The drivers are en route to the podium as we speak. What a fantastic win for the Red Bull team. They performed exceptionally today, keeping us firmly on the edge of our seats throughout the entirety of the race. Congratulations to everyone at the team.
So it's Red Bull who take maximum points here today away from the Japanese Grand Prix, getting the 1-2 victory, and Lewis Hamilton crucially getting that 3rd place position to keep his title hopes alive, especially as Bottas, he's down in P21 with that unfortunate puncture that just came out of the blue. So unfortunate for the Finn, but nonetheless, you got Giovinazzi finishing in 4th place. Amazing job by both Alfa Romeo drivers. Kimi in 9th place. Congrats to them, but that is bad news for us in the constructors, as they may be able to take away a position from us in the constructors standings with that crucial victory from them. Daniel Ricciardo finishing in 5th place. I'm glad about that because we ended up crashing into the Australian driver in the end. A deserved finish for Alonso, picking up 6th. We pick up 7th place, and Verstappen moves ahead of Daniel Ricciardo for 3rd place. So no matter how well McLaren did with a pit stop, they ultimately moved behind in the driver's standings. So thank you guys so much for watching this episode. If you did enjoy this episode, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe for more F1 content.